Let's get started and add your awesome new website to Google Search Console. There are a variety of ways you can do that, and in this training, I'll demonstrate two of them. To begin, please open Search Console in your web browser. You can find the exact address in the course notes. Once you've opened it, click the blue Start Now button. Once you've clicked Start Now, Google Search Console will ask you to sign in with your Google account. If you have a Gmail account, you already have a Google account, so you can use that one. If you've never used Search Console before, then Google will automatically create a Search Console account for you upon your first login, so there is no dedicated create account process. Once you've signed in for the first time, then Google Search Console will display a screen where it asks you to create a property, and I've already opened that screen in a separate tab. Adding your website to Search Console consists of 3 steps. The first one is to create a property. The second one is to verify the ownership of the property you've just created. The ownership verification process is a security measurement, because otherwise just anyone could add your website to his or her Search Console. As the last step, submit a sitemap to Google so Google knows which pages it should index. Let's begin and create the property. Google Search Console offers 2 different kinds of properties, a domain property and a URL prefix property. The URL prefix property is the older type of property that has its origins in the predecessor of Search Console, the Google Webmaster Tools. The domain property is the new one that was introduced with the launch of the new Google Search Console. There are a number of major differences between these 2 kinds of properties, so let's have a look at the most important ones. A domain property will automatically add all subdomains and all protocol versions like HTTP and HTTPS to Search Console, while a URL prefix property will only add the specified domain or subdomain and the specified protocol. When it comes to verifying the ownership of a property, a domain property currently supports only one method, and that's the DNS verification method, while a URL prefix property supports up to 5 different methods for verifying the ownership. What's more is, you currently can't connect a domain property to Google Analytics, while this works without any problems by using a URL prefix property. Finally, all the legacy tools and reports that Search Console inherited from its predecessor, the Google Webmaster Tools, will only work using a URL prefix property. They don't work if you choose to create the domain property. But which kind of property should you use? I recommend the URL prefix property simply because you can connect it to Google Analytics and you have multiple methods for verifying the ownership. To add your website to Search Console using a URL prefix property, enter the desired domain or subdomain plus the desired protocol. Once you're finished, click Continue. Next, you will need to verify the ownership of the property that you've just created. If you chose a URL prefix property, you have a number of ways to do so. For a better overview, I will collapse that area here. The first method that you can use to verify the ownership is by uploading an HTML file to your web server. You can also use an HTML meta tag, Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager if you have already added them to your website. You can also use the domain name provider method. This would be the method that you would have to use if you've chosen to create a domain property. Let's start with the HTML meta tag option. To see all the details, click the down arrow to expand the area. In this section, Google Search Console displays a meta tag that you need to copy to the clipboard. To do so, click the copy button. Now go to your content management system and paste the meta tag to the head section of your homepage. How you should do that depends on the content management system that you're using. Once you're done, come back to this tab and click the Verify button. Google Search Console will now try to find the meta tag on the homepage of your website. And if it could find it, then it will display a success message. But please mind the following. If you're using a caching plugin, then please either disable it or clear the cache so that Google Search Console can fetch the most recent version of the homepage, which contains the HTML meter tag. Next, let's have a look at the domain name provider method that you can use for URL prefix properties and will have to use for a domain property. Best way to use this method depends on the provider from which you've bought your domain. If you've bought your domain from one of the well-known providers like, for example, GoDaddy, you can use an automated verification method that will add the necessary DNS records automatically. If you've bought it from a different provider, then you would need to make the necessary DNS changes manually. As the domain that we use in this example is from GoDaddy, we can use the automatic DNS verification method. To use that, click the drop-down arrow next to any DNS provider. Select the DNS provider of your domain from the list and click it. Next, click Start Verification to start the verification process. A new tab containing a special page of your domain name provider will open, and please follow the instructions on the screen to enable Search Console to make the necessary changes for you. Once Google Search Console has made the necessary changes to your domain, it will try to verify the ownership. And in 99.9% this will fail. And it will fail because it can take 10 to 15 minutes for all the DNS changes that Google Search Console made to propagate throughout the internet. So let's just take a short break and try to check it again in 10 to 15 minutes. After 10 to 15 minutes, click the OK button in this dialog. The Verify Ownership dialog will once again appear. Scroll down, expand the section DNS name provider and click the Verify button again. As you can see, verification worked perfectly alright this time and your new property is now successfully verified. Next step is to add a sitemap. But first, let's go directly to the property and have a look at Google Search Console. For that, click the Go to Property button. If you just added a new website to Google Search Console, this report will be empty. As I have added and removed this property several times, it displays a few clicks. But once you've added your website to Google Search Console, it will take around 48 hours until you can see the first data in these reports. Now, as the last step, let's add a sitemap to Google Search Console. To do so, click the Sitemaps entry in the main menu on the left. A sitemap is necessary so that Google knows which pages your website contains and which pages it needs to crawl and to index. As you can see, there is already a sitemap listed here, and that's from all the trainings where I already demonstrated the process of adding a new property to Google Search Console. To add a new sitemap file, enter the name of the sitemap file up here. A sitemap file is typically called sitemap.xml and it resides in the top-level directory of your web server. To submit it to Google, click the Submit button. Now it can take up to 48 hours until the Googlebot will visit your website, read the sitemap.xml file, and start to index all the pages that are listed inside the sitemap.xml file. After that, you will see the first data in all the different reports that Google Search Console has to offer. And what you can do with these reports is what we are going to have a look at next.